but I would like to redress war as well for what it is in terms of the age and time we live in, how, whether we like it or not, but in Kali Yuga, subtler aspects of transforming, bringing transformations are much more difficult, and therefore the war becomes that instrumentality. It's a horrifying perspective, but that's Kali Yuga for you. Because in Kali Yuga, everything becomes much more gross, much more gross. You cannot perform that war at a subtle level, because in all eras there were these conflicts where the opposing forces will meet. In the subtler, let's say, yugas, epochs, this war were settled at a different level of affairs. Do you understand that? And do you understand why? Because it's very important. Because there are forces always meet to collide. And in the subtler epochs, there was no need to have the physical mortal combat. It would have been performed at the different level of affairs. You have to imagine this. You have to be able to imagine that the war literally was at the subtler level of how we might interpret Kurukshetra of the Bhagavad Gita. No ounce of blood was spilled, that's what I'm saying. The affair was settled at the level which is much subtler, the dimension of the Gita itself. As all scriptures, it has different dimensions of realities that it redresses. Now, the second aspect of what you have brought up to reflect on is the aspect of concern on getting other point of view as adopting into your sphere, mental and emotional sphere, only to add to the existing vasanas here, because enough to deal with your own, and here what? Like I'm being exposed to different perspectives. I would like to bring your attention to the following, and this is less subtle. What we spoke about first was of utmost importance. That at no account, if you are on the path of all-embracing. Okay, here we are. The internet glitched and threw us off. Must have been coming close to something interesting. So, okay, I'll try to pick up where we have left it. So not to hanker for more information, not to get lost in the details, because inevitably this is the more fragmented picture we have, the more information we get, sometimes we can end up with a fragmented picture. But you always need to have a balanced opinion based on potentially at least two opposing views, you see? Almost like the, Creed of Solomon, right? Solomon's method of judgment, right? Hearing two sides of the story. That's the wisdom of the Solomon. Okay, you speak. Okay, I got your story. Now I want to hear this story. It's just simple as that. But if we only prefer to stay with one story, then inadvertently we perpetuate both in what that one-sided story promulgates, but more importantly, we remain prisoners of our own conditionings, because the individual vasanas are interlinked and find their provenance in that thicker, more denser terrain of the collective conditionings, collective psychic impressions. So this is why it's so important to rise to one's own sovereignty. There are, of course, ways of doing that. If you have the power to have the horse's blinkets like that, where you cover yourself consciously. Well, horse doesn't have a choice, but I'm saying to stride forward without being affected by the peripheral vision of what this side or that side tries to tell you, tries to show, then yeah, that's one of the possibilities. You withdrew yourself entirely from any exposure. But you cannot do that. None of you can. Therefore, I said it very clearly in some of my earlier messages where suddenly the conversation went into an horizontal plane of affairs. If we had the chance, or some of you were in the monastic order, in the monastic way of life, then you might not need to be exposed to anything because you already consciously withdrew yourself from any conversation, from any point of view. Then that is honest. And that is also a strategy. You see? That strategy, of course, will not be ultimately true to the very end, but it will be. It will definitely render some results on the way. And this is what the monastic way of life, and why it is easier to withdraw yourself from affairs of the world, to leave it for a while, even for a while, so as not to get disoriented constantly by the pool of all these various perspectives. But for us householders, this is a luxury we cannot afford, because we live in a very different luxury. We live in a realm where this is now also part of our extended gesture, which manifests in a device, which if you are looking at something, something else will be given to you to look at. It's impossible. The conversation is there, and you become privy to that conversation, and that conversation begins to do its job. So you have to be able to rise above that. And I'll give you also just simple, direct examples. Every culture has guards very closely. In this respect, every civilization, everything that temporarily forms into some kind of culture, guards the collectively shared consensus. It's a must. It comes with the territory. So obviously, any civilization, and let's not forget democratic world, even if we agree that currently adopted preferred form during the capitalism is democracy. Whether democracy took place or not, we still have to be honest that democracy is only one step above tyranny, according to at least Plato's Republic, right? It's far cry from higher forms of societal order. Democracy is only a second from the bottom. It's not that great. So this is why the slippage from democracy goes straight into autocracy. Do you understand why? So in other words, there is no other step. When you slip from democracy, there's nowhere to land. You go straight to tyranny. This is the fact that Plato gave us as that most extraordinary thing to contemplate. And the highest form of all societal order is, of course, the much polemicized about enlightened ruler, that enlightened king. That's the ultimate form of which Maharishi spoke all the time in his idealistic perspective, because he couldn't speak about anything else. Not that I doubt even Maharishi was even familiar with Plato's teaching. Maharishi was cut from a different culture, and as polyvalent and polymathic that he was, I don't think he ever operated with the principles and aspects of Greek philosophy. But we know very well that where this understanding, Vedic understanding, meet, that what Plato spoke about here meets perfectly in terms of Vedic understanding of the utmost form of governance. The utmost form of governance, from Vedic point of view, is the being who reached the level of enlightenment, and then all the laws of nature spontaneously stream forth through that being, and that being is fit to guide. You see? But of course, Maharishi also spoke, we know, about the limitations of that in the age of ignorance, that is, the age of Kali Yuga, when already the field of action is perplexed. Guess what is the main predicament in our day and age to that what could serve here as a potential for the highest form of collective organization when it comes to governance?
Consciousness of the people.
Exactly. Consciousness.
Consciousness of the people.
That's exactly it. So in other words, here, not enough to have enlightened being, because in the Kali Yuga, the connection between enlightened being and the state of affairs of people is at a great rupture. We have a lot of enlightened people out there. Let's not make let's not make it into some. No, there are a lot of enlightened people out there, a lot. Some public, some not public. Some make a deal out of it, others don't. But they live in their own reality completely. In this world, but not of this world. But the collective state of affairs, the collective consciousness, needs constant uplifting. Hence, the whole impact and the emphasis on the so-called activating consciousness at the subtle level, so as to bring that for everyone to partake, TM-CD, and all the researches, and all the what was laid out.